Good. Okay, my friends, you had... Whew, sorry, I got to sneeze. Okay, sorry about that. I don't want to sneeze right in your ear if you're listening to this. Okay, so we spent some time yesterday, you watched the video, or we watched together, talking about those different phases of urine creation, right? How the nephron works. Basically, everything being dumped out from the glomerulus into the glomerular capsule. So everything is in the tubule, right? And then through that proximal convoluted tube, through the nephron loop, through the distal convoluted tube, through the collecting duct, things start going back into the blood vessels. Because remember, capillaries is what I meant to say, surround that whole tubule. And there's always this movement of, well, everything, right? The electrolytes, the water, everything but the waste gets pushed back out of the tube, back into the blood vessels, or the interstitial space around there. So what is that urine made of? When it finally gets to the end of those tubules and into those collecting ducts, and now starts getting funneled down into that renal pelvis, down into the ureter itself, what's it made of? Well, the urine composition changes. Man, do I admit this? I don't know, y'all will think I'm stupid. Like, I pay attention to what my urine looks like. Isn't that weird? Yeah, it's just one of those things that you're like, huh, well, what did I eat? Oh, well, I had this or I had this, and it changes. The texture, the color of it changes based upon how much you drink, based upon what you eat. There are differences. It's weird, I know, but it's true.
My grandmother was telling me that where she lived, in order to tell if you had diabetes, they get some of your feet and let it sit out, and if ants came to it, it's because there's too much sugar in it.
Absolutely correct. When you eat an awful lot of sugar, your urine changes. It becomes different. And yes, that is a great, very simple way that yes, if there are sugar, because normally there's no sugar in your urine. Okay, unless, again, you've taken an awful lot of sugar into your body, and the body's saying, hey, I got to get rid of this. I don't want to just store it all. And so they let that glucose go out into the urine. But yeah, well, you're just saying hello. So it does change from time to time, and it does reflect, again, mostly how much water you have, right? That really is what determines how concentrated your urine is. Okay, one more piece about your urine. Are you comfortable the color of urine you see in the toilet or in the urinal is not true?
Yeah,
because it's diluted, right? For a guy in the urinal, it's not very much there, of course, depending on what kind of urinal you're in. There's not a whole lot of water there, right? So there's not as much dilution. But think about a toilet. That's like almost a gallon of water that you are then putting your urine into, right? So if it still looks yellow, what must it actually have been if you just collected it? Are you with me? Right, it would be right. It would be like some magenta color or something. I don't know, right? So again, the point is be aware that if you are paying attention, which I know it seems weird, but it is a good thing to pay attention to your urine. Realize it should be pretty clear, pretty consistently, right? Otherwise, you are dehydrated. And in the end, even though your kidneys work an awful lot to keep the water out of your urine, to keep the water in your body, the urine is still 95% water, which is craziness. Yes, ma'am?
What about overhydration?
So overhydration can happen. Your textbook actually talks about this. Very rare. As a matter of fact, there was really very little things in medical journals about overhydration. Like people can actually die from drinking too much water. Okay? And really it's only been over the last 30 years. And here are the two groups, almost exclusively. You want to know who are people that die of overhydration? Number one, first-time marathon runners. Because everybody tells them you have to drink, you have to drink, you have to drink. And so they drink all the time, every station they come to, and they end up, you're basically diluting your blood is what you do. That's how you die. Like your kidneys can't possibly keep up with the fact that you've taken in so much water. And it throws off the balance. So that's number one. Number two, other person, again, the only two groups that almost ever die of overhydration, college students. Who think, hey, let's chug like this humongous water like every... They talk just like that too, those college students, right? Yeah. I'm not kidding you. And you have people who will die because they thought it was cool, let's drink this whole 3 gallons of water in 2 minutes. Oh, yes, it'll kill you. Yes. Normally you will vomit, right? Okay, but that's part of the whole thing. Oh, no, I got to keep it down. And yeah, again, you're totally diluting the blood. You will die.
I heard this thing on this talk radio, or it was some sort of radio show where they were giving out these prize to whoever could drink the most water. This woman won, but
yeah, then she died. Absolutely, it happens. A radio show is giving out a prize for a woman who drank the most water in this period of time. She won. Hey, great, but she died. Yeah. Yeah. If it sounds like it's stupid, it probably is. And you probably shouldn't do it. The Tide Pod thing. Wait, what? Why would you eat? What? I'm going to sniff a condom through my... What? Huh? Stupidness. Stupidness. Dumbness. 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 It is. It is. All right. Last piece. Last piece. It's stupidness. It's stupidness. It's stupidness. You do have in the urine, stay with me now, so I just shouldn't have even brought it up because then it gets y'all talking. Stupidness. Definitely that urea, the uric acid, amino acids, electrolytes, these are all things that are in the urine. And again, we can test based upon a number of different pieces. What is in the urine can help tell you things about. How do most pregnancy tests work? You put urine on this test, on the stick, and it's looking for a very specific hormone that is released when the egg implants. We'll talk more about that when we get to the next unit here. But there are many of these kind of things. That's why very common when you go to the doctor, they want you to provide a urine sample because they will actually check different pieces. Okay, let's continue. How do we get rid of the urine? Because once it's in the collecting ducts, right, it is now officially urine. It's sent down through those collective ducts through the minor and the major calyces, basically just the tubes coming together, right? The collecting ducts coming together, out into the renal pelvis, and then out into the ureters, finally down to the bladder. And the bladder, again, most folk think this is the main organ of the urinary system, but it's not. It's simply the storage tank, right? It's the place where that urine goes to wait until we get enough of it to justify us going to the bathroom. Does that make sense? And then once you're ready to do that, of course, the urine comes out through the urethra. Let's talk about these ureters. They're muscular tubes. I never thought of this, but it makes sense. These tubes are muscular, smooth muscle, right? Compose a good piece of it. The muscular middle layer, and of course you have mucus on the inside and an outer protective layer on the outside. And how does it move the urine? Well, how does anything in the body move that's in a tube? Peristalsis, right? This little contractive waves. And I had never thought of that with the ureters, but that's how it works. The little contractions move that urine down that ureter. So there is some gravity pieces involved with there, sure. Because again, kidneys are higher than the bladder. But it's more moved through those peristaltic waves. Yeah, definitely. And then there's like a little valve, a little flap at the end of the ureter as it enters the bladder, which is nice. So that way it doesn't flow back the other direction. It's all just moving one way into the bladder. Let's talk a bit about that bladder itself. It's a hollow organ, thankfully, like a little balloon. It's distendable. What does that mean? Distendable. Stretchy. Yeah, it's elastic. Do you remember when we did our tissues way back in chapter 3? Right? That it was made of this type of epithelial cell that allowed it to stretch, allowed it to change shape. Do we remember this? Way back? Okay, this transitional epithelial that allowed it to stretch. So it's distendable. And it is muscular. There's a muscular layer to it. Yes, ma'am? We'll talk a bit about those. It's basically just a concentration of these uric acid pieces. There's a nice picture of it there on page 496. It's basically, there's enough of these different filtrates that they kind of bond together in this little stone thing. And they're tiny. If you look on page 496, they show you a little picture. And that's just a little tiny stone that's on a person's thumb. I mean, it's not very big. But again, the tube that's trying to pass through is very small. And it hurts like crazy. I've never had a kidney stone, thankfully. But those who have told me it is like the worst pain in the world. Well, mostly it comes from dehydration, like not drinking enough water, right? So making sure we drink lots of water is one of the key pieces. But it also has to do with diet and those kind of things. Is that cool? Okay. Didn't somebody hear? Oh, Mr. Lutz, yes. Yes, oh. There's a great comedian. Who's the comedian that does a bit about Bill Engvall, I think, one of the blue-collar comedy guys? Anyway, that's always what I think about. Because... so again, you have basically this stone, right? Look at, does that look very smooth, that stone there? No. It's jagged, it's got edges, it's like trying to pass a spike ball through this tiny little tube. And that's what it does. It's going to move all the way down the ureters into the bladder, and all that direction is going to cause pain, right? And then once it's in the bladder, okay, things are okay. Now it could kind of block in the bladder, but then it has to actually pass through the urethra. Right? Yeah, ouch.
So what happens if it accidentally breaks it?
So there could be some bursting. Like if it slices it or cuts it in some way, that would be a problem. They'd have to go repair that. Yeah, that can happen. Usually it's stretchy enough that it'll go through, but again, it's significantly hurting. Or they can go in and they can actually break it apart, with some instruments and then pull the pieces out. Yes. Yeah.
Can I go to one?
Yes, go. All right. They talk about the internal flora of the bladder having what they call this trigone. 2 ureters coming in and 1 urethra coming out. 3, right? So basically these 3 holes coming into the bladder. And you've got these, again, 4 layers. And again, the most important is that muscular layer, the detrusor muscle that surrounds the neck of the bladder that forms these sphincters. And of course, sphincters, the whole point of that is they can be tight most of the time, right? But then they can relax to allow the tube to open and let the urine flow. And you actually have 2. You have an internal sphincter muscle and you have an external sphincter muscle. So this would be a male bladder. How do I know that? Because it has a prostate gland. The ladies don't have prostate glands. So the ureter's coming in, the bladder, and then there's this internal urethral sphincter that holds. It just always stays contracted, right? The external sphincter is made of skeletal muscle. So we can actually control that. That's basically, as a kid, what you learned how to control, right? Hopefully. All of you learn how to. Though sometimes I wonder about my students because they always have to go to the bathroom all the time. Like, did you not learn how to control this? And so there actually is a reflex. When the bladder fills up to a certain point, it's actually stretching it slightly, right? And that stretching causes what it's called the micturition reflex. That's actually what urination, the actual medical name for it, is to micturate, to make urine. Okay? So when that muscle in the bladder contracts, that sphincter muscle has to relax. right? And the more it fills, the more it fills, the more it triggers this reflex that, oh boy, I need to go to the bathroom, right? But you can hold it, right? You can hold it, but it keeps filling. And you start, oh man, I really have to go to the bathroom. I really, really have to go to the bathroom. But you can hold it, you can hold it. Are you comfortable there's a point where you can no longer hold this? Like, you can't hold it indefinitely. I'll tell you one of the more embarrassing things in my life. I was in college, right? So I'm with my wife, not my wife, she's not my wife, she's my girlfriend, and we're with her aunt and uncle, and we went to this Chinese restaurant. And I rarely drink caffeine, because it does weird things to me. But they have that tea, you know, that nice, it's so tasty, especially when you put like a whole pack of sugar in there. Very tasty. So I'm drinking this tea, and we're down in South Bend. South Bend's maybe about 25 minutes south of Andrews. And we're riding home. And so we're riding in the car. It's her aunt and uncle and my girlfriend, who's my wife now, her cousin, and me, right? So the five of us. And we leave the restaurant, and I realize, oh my word, I've got to go to the bathroom. 25 minutes, I can hold it. I'm a big boy, right? I can make it. By about 10 minutes later, I was dying. I'm like crossing my legs, I'm like dancing around. But of course, you don't want to say anything. It's a little embarrassing, right? Finally, about 5 minutes before we get home, I said, I have to stop. I'm sorry. I have got to go to the bathroom or I'm going to pee my pants right now. Sure enough, just on the side of the road, went behind a tree. Okay, fine, oh, thank you. Okay. But I was so embarrassed. You know? Because what can you do? You can't stop it, right? So yes. Uh-oh, let's not tell each other stories now. Oh, mission trip. Hey, same thing. You gotta go, man. If you gotta go, you gotta go. It happens. It happens. Oh, you clapped. Wow. Talk about performance pressure. Wow, that's impressive. Impressive. All right. Yes. Shh. I suppose they could. The question was asked, would someone not have that mucus layer? I would assume they could. Most folk do. Again, because that's, anytime you have access to the outside, you have this mucus that helps prevent germs and things from coming in. So I would think that most folk do. Yeah. Come back to me, friends. Sorry I got you talking about peeing, and I apologize. Yes. So a urinary tract infection, UTI, is basically having some sort of bacteria or virus that's coming up that urethra and causing an infection. So again, this is always open to the public, right? Not the whole public, but the outside, right? So there's always things coming in. Again, that's why you have that mucosal layer on that urethra to help prevent that pieces. Again, what's the best way to prevent this? Is making sure you're drinking. Yeah, it's one of the better ways. And of course, good hygiene. Good hygiene. But I mean, it's one of those facts of life. Ladies tend to deal with it much more often.
So what is cranberry juice?
The compounds that's in cranberry juice tends to flush that mucus very well. That's one of the main reasons why they tell you to drink cranberry juice. The reason why ladies tend to be more frequent with UTIs than guys, their urethra is smaller. It's a smaller distance. Plus, there's a lot more fluids that ladies deal with than the guys do in that urethral area, if you catch my drift. Right? You're dealing with a lot. I mean, we're basically just going to the bathroom. That's about all we ever do there. But there's lots of other fluids that ladies deal with there. Please. Yeah. I want to make sure you understand that this micturition reflex is just that, a reflex. So somebody who is paralyzed, let's say from the waist down, and have no feeling in their bladder, they can't tell when they have to go to the bathroom, it still behaves the same way. Shh, stay with me. It still behaves the same way. So once the bladder reaches a certain stage, they go to the bathroom. They can't control it, obviously, because they have no control over that external sphincter, but the process is still exactly the same. How do? They use a catheter. A catheter is basically a tube they insert up the urethra into the bladder that will drain the urine out. So yeah, that's how they would do it. But that's not like a continual flow of urine. As the bladder fills, it comes out.
So like with somebody paralyzed,
Shh.
involuntary movements still work?
Yeah. Right, because many of those things are reflexic. So right, it's just a portion of the brain. Like in this case, you're actually dealing with the sacral portion of the spinal cord that has this reflex center that causes this to happen.
So if you injure the part of your brain that controls the reflexes, then you wouldn't have this
Right. Sure.
Would that be worse?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what part of it is, you could just die. Yeah, because usually, if it's controlling a reflex that's not essential like that, it's going to be near places that like our breathing and heartbeats and yeah. Are you with me, friends? Shh. Talked about all this stuff here. Yeah. Any questions? Any questions that you have for me?
Okay, wait. So you know how doctors are always changing like the amount of water you're supposed to drink a day? They are? Yeah, because like half your body weight. Oh, drink 8 glasses of water. It's like which water?
It's cutting your weight in half, and that's the amount of ounces.
Drink until your urine is mostly clear. The end. Honestly, that's the easiest way of doing with it. For us, it's more than you think. Like it's more than we normally do. Yeah. As long as you increase, you're on the right track. You're on the right track.
So what's like how much in our like